Okay, today is the day. I'm gonna finish installing my dust collector. I have gotten so many comments and questions regarding this project, and this is a great example why I don't take on commission jobs or requests for videos, because when I'm motivated to do something, there's almost no stopping me. But if I'm not motivated, well then I guess it takes me 2 years to get something done. So before another project steals my attention, let's get this thing installed. So if you missed the first video where I turned my one-stage dust collector into a two-stage, there is a link in the description of the video for you. Since that video, the motor has been a wall decoration in my shop collecting dust. So I asked my husband to hold the motor while I unmounted it and moved it out to the shed. Well, he moved it around to the shed for me. Thank you.
All the way around back, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Also, if you want to watch the videos on how I built the shed, those are also in the description. So I grabbed my dust collector, the trash can, and the thawing baffle out of storage and put it all together. Then I measured from the floor up to the intake so I can get a rough measurement on where I needed to cut the hole inside of my shop. I did use a stud finder to make sure I wasn't going to be running into a stud. To go through the wall, I'm going to be using a through-the-wall port kit that Rockler puts out. I took the port and I traced a circle around it on the wall. Then I drilled a hole just big enough for a jigsaw blade to fit into and used a jigsaw to cut it out. Once the inside wall was cut, I used a drill to pierce the outside wall. However, to better locate this hole, I drilled 4 additional holes at different points around the circle, making sure that my bit was pressed up against the edge, so that whenever I moved to the outside, I could use the fitting and place those 4 holes inside the diameter and then just trace around it. This gave me my circle to cut out with the jigsaw. I moved back to the inside of my shop and put the through-the-wall port into place. This fitting doesn't come with any fasteners, so I went ahead and pre-drilled and put in 4 screws just to hold it in place. So this is just a regular coupling, and then this is a 5 to 4 inch reducer. I know that going to 4 inches is going to reduce the efficiency, but with the short runs that I have, I'm really not worried about it. So with that done, I called him back up to mount the motor.
Whenever you're ready.
No, I need it higher.
Yeah, man strength, saving your butt one more time.
Wait, will you just lift the motor?
Yep.
There you go. Excellent.
Cool, good job.
So I need this exhaust pointing that way because I want to exhaust it outside of the shed. So I need to figure out how to rotate this around 180 degrees. There's a bunch of bolts on the bottom that I unscrewed in order to get the bottom cap off. Then there's a turbine on the inside that is held to the motor by a center bolt. So I was trying to loosen this up the typical way, lefty-loosey, and it turns out that these threads are left-handed. So if you're doing the same thing, know to go the opposite direction. You need to be turning it right to loosen it up. Then I undid a few more bolts holding the baffle onto the motor. However, whenever I rotated it, the exhaust landed right on a stud. So instead I rotated it 90 degrees. So what I'll end up doing is cutting a hole in the side of my shop and piping it out. It'll probably be another 2 years. I moved back to the inside of the shop to cut down the pipe running through the wall. To do this accurately, I grabbed the fitting that rests on the end, measured the depth, and then used a Sharpie to make several points around the pipe. I then used painter's tape to connect the point so that I can come back with a hacksaw and use the edge of the tape as a guide to make a straight cut. Awesome. Okay, now it was time to actually start hooking up my machines. I'm going to be using some 4-inch flex hose. Now, Rockler makes some brackets that will hold the hose directly to the wall. However, I was trying to minimize how sharp this initial curve was. So I ended up drawing out a simple curve and cutting it on the bandsaw. And this is just a bracket to help hold it off the wall slightly. Once I figured out the length that the hoses needed to be, I used scissors to cut the plastic part and square nose pliers to cut the inside metal ring. Great. I originally used this flex hose to route to the bandsaw, however I really didn't like how droopy it was. So I ended up moving my wall brackets around slightly so I could use a more rigid flex hose. Now I did add in a blast gate so I can kill this line whenever I'm not using the bandsaw.
Then I continued the run behind the bandsaw, and here I did use the brackets to hold the hose to the wall.
So this back one's gonna go down to the floor sweep, and then this one is gonna be to my table saw.
Alright, now to actually start hooking up my machines. I drilled yet another hole in my shop wall, then ran a new longer wire out to the DC. I took off the cap to the electrical box on the motor and pulled out the existing wire. I ran in my new wire, stripped them back, and then connected them to the terminals.
So I put new terminals on the wires. I'm just gonna put them back into place.
So the plug I'm using was actually left by the previous homeowner, and as you can tell, it's a little bit too long. So I cut off the plug, stripped back the wires, and then just relocated the plug end to the length I needed it. Then it was just a matter of routing the wire along the wall to plug into the receiver. So something special to note is this is the only remote I could find that was rated at 20 amps, which is what the Harbor Freight pulls on startup. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on so that you can hear how quiet it is.
And then of course the remote, I can turn it on and off. It does have a clip, but more than likely I'll keep it on the table saw fence. Okay, so this is gonna be the hose that I'm now gonna be piping over to my table saw, but just for testing purposes, I'm gonna use it to suck up the dust.
Unfortunately, I just cleaned my shop the day before, so I didn't have much dust laying around.
Now I'm gonna try out the floor sweep. Configuration to test it out, but I might end up having to move this hose just to make it easier to utilize the floor sweep and to access that blast gate. So everything that I used here, except for the receiver and remote, can be found at Rockler, and I've left you a link in the description to all of the different items. So that's it for this one. I am certainly very glad to have this project done, and I will see you next time.